Hello and welcome to this video where we are going to be discussing everything you need to know in order to prepare yourself for the microdosing experience. And the first thing that I'm going to go over is the fact that there are so many mushroom varieties to choose from. A lot of times, if you're new to this, it might be a little overwhelming when you look at all the different types, especially once you get online and are looking at the dispensaries and they're showing so many different ones and you don't know where to start. Paul Stamets recommends any type of psilocybe cubensis, and the ones that most people typically go with when they're beginning to microdose are golden teachers. Those ones tend to have not as strong as an effect as some other mushrooms, and those are also the mushrooms that are used for therapeutic sessions. Keep in mind that I'm not saying you have to start with those. It's just a recommendation. Feel free to go with any variety that you feel is best for you. One of the biggest things that you need to do in order to prepare yourself for the microdosing experience is journaling. I've mentioned this in other videos, and now I'm going to explain it in more detail. And yes, you have to hear this again. I'm sorry, but it is a very important part of the process. So it's recommended to begin writing your feelings and your moods. You don't have to make it a big deal. It's just a few sentences, just your feelings and your moods for at least 2 weeks before you are going to be taking your first microdose. The reason for that is so that you can keep track of your feelings and your moods, and you're going to continue doing that once you start microdosing for the first little while. And it's keeping track so that you notice any patterns, any changes, anything that's different, and it helps you to know if the microdosing is working for you. The biggest reason for it is so that you can find the right dose for you. Keeping track of those feelings and moods is how you're going to find that dose. If you are microdosing, if you started and you aren't really noticing any changes, it's probably indicating that you need to adjust the dose. That's where journaling comes in. That's what makes it so important. Once you find the dose that's right for you and you're familiar with how psilocybin affects you, then you don't have to continue journaling. It's not something you have to do forever. It's just something that's highly recommended so that you can get the most out of the microdosing experience. It's also recommended the day you take your very first microdose that you take it on a day that's a fairly good day and not one where you're feeling a lot of stress or anxiety or just a really bad day in general. The reason that's recommended is because psilocybin tends to amplify how we're already feeling. So if you're really feeling stressed out or if you're feeling really anxious and you take a capsule, it may enhance those already negative emotions. And if that happens, people might think that it's the psilocybin that's making them feel worse. And it kind of is, but not in the ways that you're thinking. That's why they recommend to make sure you take it on a good day. Once you know how psilocybin affects you and how it makes you feel, then I'd say it's okay to take it even when you're having a bad day, because you'll already know how it affects you and you won't tend to think that your bad mood or your bad day is because of that microdose. And in the beginning for myself, I did that. I made sure that I had a good day on the very first day. But then after I became comfortable with psilocybin and knew how it affected me, I can take it even if I'm not having the best day, and it tends to not make it worse. It actually makes it better. But I'm just sharing this with you because it is one of the recommendations. It's also advised to take your microdose in the morning, and they recommend you try to take it at the same time every morning. The reason for taking it in the morning is because it is meant to enhance your daily life. Now, in the cases of people that have reported that it's made them feel drowsy and sleepy, then it's recommended to take it at night. So if that happens to you and it makes you sleepy or drowsy, take it at night. And if you also have insomnia, it might also be a bonus for you because it might help you sleep a little better as well. Another thing to prepare for is the day you take your very first microdose, it's recommended that you don't have anywhere to be for the first few hours. The reason for that is in case there's any adverse effects, which there probably won't be, but it's a lot to do with that set and setting. So the set is your mindset, which we just talked about, to make sure that you take your very first dose on a good day and not one where you're stressed out or full of anxiety. The other one is the setting. You need to take it when you're somewhere where you're feeling safe and comfortable. And that's because taking that first dose can be anxiety inducing. And like I said, if there is any adverse effects, you will be at home where you do feel safe and comfortable. Once you feel comfortable taking psilocybin and you know how it affects you, then it's okay to go ahead and take that microdose wherever you might be. The recommendation though for the first time is to be somewhere where you're feeling safe and comfortable. It's all part of the set and the setting. Another thing that's recommended, and I think I've talked about this before, is to start low. A lot of times people think that because they're a bigger person, they need more of a dose. And that's not necessarily the way psilocybin works. It might work like that for some pharmaceutical medications, but we're talking about something completely different here. So the best thing you can do is start with the lowest possible dose and go up from there. When I started microdosing, the lowest capsules that I could buy were 100 milligrams, and now they come in 50. So whatever feels most comfortable for you. If you're comfortable starting at 100, go ahead and start at 100. If you're more comfortable starting at 50, that's how I felt. And because I didn't have those capsules available to me at the time, I just kind of cut my dose in half. And I quickly realized that 50 was too low. But at the same time, it made me feel better and I felt safer starting as low as I possibly could. It's also best to not overthink the dose too much. Just start with whatever feels most comfortable for you, whether it's 50 or 100. But do keep in mind that it's not recommended to start with a dose higher than 100. And the reason for starting at 50 is strictly for your comfort level if you have any anxiety or apprehensions around it. Another thing to remember is not to mix your mushrooms with alcohol or any recreational substances, including cannabis, even if you're using cannabis medicinally. The reason for that is when you mix psilocybin with alcohol or any other substances, it may amplify the effects of the psilocybin. And we kind of already went over that. If you're feeling anxious already, it's not a good idea to smoke some cannabis because mixing that with the psilocybin might amplify it even more. That's just something to be aware of. One of the most important things that I like to teach people is to know your source. Please only buy your mushrooms, your capsules, however you're going to be using it. Make sure to buy it from a dispensary only. The dispensaries have mycologists that know what they're doing when it comes to growing mushrooms, harvesting them, turning them into capsules, that kind of thing. It's really, really important. You don't want to be buying it from someone on the street, but also there's a lot of, I see it on social media all the time. A lot of times when I make a post, anything that has to do with mental health, there are people that come out of the woodwork and they leave comments, big long comments that say, oh, I felt so much better after I started microdosing. Go to Instagram and buy from blah, blah, blah. Don't follow those comments. Don't follow that advice. Those people do not have your best interest at heart. They are only trying to sell their product. Please just purchase it from a reputable dispensary. There are a lot of them you can find online. I can't give out any sources here, but if all you have to do is Google it, and you're going to come up with a lot of different websites And the best way to find a really good source is just by looking at their websites, looking at the products they sell, the descriptions, that kind of thing. That's how you're going to be able to determine whether or not it's a safe source to purchase from. Another important thing to keep in mind when it comes to preparing to microdose is that you're going to need a lot of patience, especially when you're in the beginning stages and you're just trying to figure out the dose for you. I know that we want to see results and we want to see them immediately, but like any other kind of medicine, it takes time to figure out the right dose for you. If you're taking pharmaceutical medication, the same thing happens. They a lot of times have to adjust the dose a few times until you find the right one for you. This is no different. So just keeping in mind that patience is the key. If you're not seeing the results that you want to see right away, it probably means you need to adjust that dose, like I've mentioned before. So that's why patience is so important. Just because it might not be working right away doesn't mean it won't. It just means you need to find the right dose for you. Another important thing to keep in mind when you are trying to find the right dose for you is to pay attention to your body. Listen to what your body is telling you and pay attention to how it feels inside. If your body is telling you that this doesn't feel right, then listen to it. It's very important. Your body will always lead you in the right direction. One of the last things that I'm going to mention when it comes to preparing ourselves for the microdosing experience is to remember the importance of that tolerance break. No matter what protocol you are using, there's going to be a break. And we've talked about it before, what the break is for, but the most important reason for it is for the tolerance break. While psilocybin is not an addictive substance, we can build up a tolerance to it. So taking that break is very important in order to not build up that tolerance. If we don't take a break and we just keep going and going and going, we're going to have to continually increase that dose until we're no longer microdosing, and that could be a disaster, and I do not advise that at all. It's important to take those breaks. All right, now that we've gone over what we need to do in order to prepare ourselves for the microdosing experience, we're going to go on to the next video where I'm going to address a few of the questions that I get asked the most. So it might be some information that we've already talked about, but I will go into it a little bit deeper. So I look forward to seeing you in the next video.